Good morning to everyone. My name is Juan Miguel Giralt. I started my PhD 1 year ago in the spatial ecology group with Luis Santamaria. The supervisor of my PhD is Luis Santamaria Galdón, and the members of the thesis committee is Ramón Soriguer, Pelayo Acevedo, and Silvia Pérez. The title of my thesis is Plant-ungulate dynamics in Mediterranean areas with high interannual variation in plant productivity. Ungulates are keystones of ecosystems, as they are playing important roles in many different ecological processes. And the recent publications during the last decade, even earlier, have highlighted the overpopulation of these ungulate species in many regions of the planet, mainly in boreal and temperate environments. The consequences of these overpopulations are affecting vegetation composition and structure, also impacts on soil properties, nutrient cycles, and these effects can cascade to many other organisms and processes. In areas where wild and domestic ungulates coexist, these effects could be even more severe. And usually the management of domestic species is normally focused on production, meat or milk, and these have also impacts or effects on the impacts of ungulate community in the ecosystem. In areas like Mediterranean or semi-arid environments, usually are characterized by high variability in rainfall and also the consequent plant productivity. So all these impacts affect in a different way in these environments than in others like Arctic or boreal. So this variability in rainfall produce interannual and intraannual changes in the ecosystem that have important effects in the plant-herbivore interactions. And finally, climate change obviously add more uncertainty to the possible effects of these species in many areas of the world. So it's really important to comprehend, to understand what is currently happening, and mostly in these Mediterranean and semi-arid environments where the climate effects are really patent. My thesis project is part of the GRACE project that is led by Luis Santamaria. The main objective of the project is to provide tools and criteria for an adaptive management of wild ungulates and also the environments where they are living. This project, in general, really in general, has three main aspects that made up the whole objective. This is the primary production, also obviously environmental conditions and so on, and then the population dynamics that is affected by the primary production, but also affecting the vegetation as well, and then the movement ecology, how the animals move, how the animals behave, and how they use the space, and how they depend of the energy intake. The Doñana National Park is the case study of the project and obviously of my thesis. This is a really nice example of how weather variation or climate variation, rainfall variation could produce important changes, intraannual and interannual changes, and maybe long-term changes in the ecosystems. Rainfall obviously every year change completely the aspects, the conditions, and also the functioning of the national park. And also, Doñana National Park has a really diverse community of ungulates and allows us to approach this study and this analysis more or less considering all the important and key aspects. Here you can see in the center the main core of the project, the GRACE project, which, as I said, the main objective is the adaptive management of wild and domestic ungulates, and also the 4 main parts that are making up the project. My thesis is going to develop mainly these 2 parts, population dynamics and movement and spatial ecology of ungulate species, but obviously is interacting really closely with these other 2, plant primary production and also environmental conditions, and the grazing impact and other vegetation herbivore interactions within the environment, the national park. I also had a review of the causes and consequences of overpopulation of ungulates in this kind of environments. Maybe we will try to approach also some expectations or modeling for future scenarios. The structure of my thesis is divided in 4 sections. The section 1 is a review, which includes only 1 chapter, that is a review on the causes and consequences of ungulate around us in temperate and boreal environments. There were other previously published reviews, but we are going to add the new aspects like the combination or the coexistence of ungulates, wild and domestic species of ungulates, and also the bottom-up and bottom-up and up-bottom effects of vegetation and ungulate species. In section 2, we have the chapter 2 and the chapter 3, historical population trends and then population models. For the wild domestic wild species, we are going to develop population models, but for the domestic species, maybe population model is not the proper term, because we are going to approach the secondary production. I mean the weight, the meat they produce. And the section 3, movement ecology, it has other 2 chapters, chapter 4 and chapter 5. The first one is habitat choice and habitat use, and the second one, the chapter 5, is properly the analysis of the movement of the species. And finally, the section 4 is an approach on how to use this information, these results, for a better management of ungulate populations. This is just a structure of the data available, scientific publication obviously for the chapter 1, this is a review, environmental data mainly acquired from satellite images, NDVI, rainfall, hydroperiod, vegetation, etc. This is used in chapter 2 to 5. And then we have density and demographic data that is spatially distributed already, direct counts of the population of wild and domestic species. We have also some life history traits and also demographic data, age, sex, and so on. And then we have moving data from GPS track individuals. I'm going to explain them in detail now. So the first one is the direct counts during rutting and rutting seasons for both red deer and fallow deer. They are available on an annual basis since 1986. They are not spatially distributed, but they are covering different management areas with different densities, so we can make some analysis on that. And the source is the Doñana National Park. Then we have also management reports of on domestic ungulates. The source is also the national park. And here we have the same period since 1986. is also provided for different management areas. Here is a bit small, but you can see different management areas. Here is Marismillas, El Puntal, La Reserva, Los Sotos, Marisma de Hinojos, Guadiamar, Las Nuevas, Caracoles, etc. So here we can see these different management areas. Each one has different densities of wild and domestic species, and also completely different vegetation types, even in marshland, within marshland, and even for terrestrial ecosystems. And here we have also some demographic data on sex, age, etc., and also some sanitary information about the animals that are affected by tuberculosis, for example. The next important source of data is the density estimates. The proper term is just census or transects that are made by the use of distance sampling methodology that allows to obtain density and estimates. They are really well spatially distributed in the national park, and they are covering different vegetation types, different habitats. So in that case, we have wild and domestic observations in different habitats, so we can relate them to different habitat uses, for example. No? They are available from 1992 to 1995. Some of the data are currently available in digital format, but some of them were just old documents that we are already compiled and digitized. Here is the animal movement data, which we are currently gathering. We already finished the tagging of 30 horses and 30 cows in the national park in different management areas, as I said. And we are going to start soon, I hope, the tagging of red deer and fallow deer. We have already the bioethical permissions. We have already the permissions for the anesthetics, etc. And these devices are given two positions per hour, so it's 48 locations per day, around 1,500 locations per month for each individual. And then we have 30 horses and 30 cows already. We expect to tag also, I hope, some red deer and fallow deer as well. And the expectation is to have at least 2 years of continuous monitoring. Just to finalize the explication of the description of the data, we have the environmental data. One part is the primary production and the hydro period. The primary production is obtained from NDVA images. They are available from the satellite images, Landsat and other satellites. And also we have the hydro period. This information is obtained from the last laboratory in the EBD, and this is a paper published by a group of Luis Santamaria, Javier Bustamante, and other researchers here that apply a method to obtain proper estimates of biomass by using NDVI images. So we are going to use something like that. And finally, the vegetation maps that are made also and provided by the last EBD, and they have also they produce maps every 5 years on terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems. Here you can see different vegetation types in the terrestrial part of the Doñana National Park, and here you can see the marshlands and also the different vegetation types, and also some changes between 1 year to another. This method is potentially replicable, so maybe we suppose that we can apply this methodology to other years in order to construct a long-term and continuous data series. I'm going to start with the chapters. The chapter 1 is a review. It's focused on the causes and consequences of ungulate overpopulations in temperate and boreal environments, and we are going to introduce how the coexistence of wild and domestic species are increasing, or what are the effects of these consequences, and also which causes are affecting both kind of ungulates. The chapter 2 is an analysis of the population dynamics of wild ungulates, historical trends of wild ungulates in the Doñana National Park, and we are going to control or to take into account the density dependent factors, also the effect of domestic ungulates, different densities, the trends in density of domestic ungulates, how they affect the population and the trends of wild species, other environmental factors like extreme climatic events, and also interspecific relationships. So here you can see this is a graph showing the data that is already collected and on different main species, fallow deer, red deer, cow and horse. And you can see really important fluctuations of the population through this period. Obviously, they should have relevant causes as well, the relevant reasons. So we are going to analyze what are the factors and to what extent they are affecting the plant primary production, I mean the fluctuations in the population, if they are plant primary production, density dependence factors, extreme climatic events, or interspecific relationships with mainly domestic ungulates. The chapter 3 is the construction or the application of population models. As I said before, population model is the proper term for the wild species, but maybe not for the domestic ones, because we are not going to change. We are not going to see any change in the population dynamics of domestic species as they are managed by the national park and the owners. So they are controlling the populations to keep always the same population size that is allowed and permitted by the administration. Here we are going to use density estimates and direct counts of the total population, or estimates of the total population. We are going to use also demographic data, environmental data, and life history traits like the weight, as I said previously. The two models that we are going to use for these different wild and domestic species is the stage space model for the wild ones, because it allows to control for the stochastic observation error, and also because you can use different source of data. So they are really powerful and really useful models, I think, and also integral projection models for the for the domestic species. We are going to use these integral projection models for the domestic species because as we have for two different management areas, the natural reserve and the Guadiamar reserve, we have data on the weight of each animal each year. We have a continuous data on the performance of these animals, and we can relate that continuous information to the changes in the environmental conditions, density dependent factors, or even interspecific relationships. So I think they are a really good option, and also they are, at least it seems to be more accurate and more precise and powerful than other kind of models. The chapter 4 is the habitat choice, habitat use, and here here you can see the data from 2005 and 2018 that is already available in a digital format. We already collected all the old data in documents from 1992, even earlier, and we are going to, we already do it. We have already digitized this information, and also we obtain the maps, also in paper, of the old transits, And then we also digitize these maps, and we auto-rectificate, and now we have also the old transects and the old information in a spatially explicit way, and also we can relate that with the old vegetation maps, for example, and also with the NDVI from these periods, and the density and so on. So we have from 1992 to the present a really important source of data of how the animals are using their space and their resources. And here, obviously, we are going to see, as we did with the population dynamics, here we are going to use more or less the same approach, but instead of try to understand which factors are affecting population dynamics, here we are going to use which factors are affecting the habitat use. So here we are going to use vegetation cover, obviously the proportion of this kind of vegetation, density dependent factors, NDVI, maybe we can try to use nutrient content. And also we have to take into account the trends and also the lags, because sometimes an event has the impact maybe in a time lag of months or years. The chapter 5 is the movement ecology of the wild and domestic ungulates. And here we are already collecting a lot of information. I think they are really powerful information. And we have many different options to use these data. And we have already we have to think what is the best way to do it, the best approaches, or the most interesting topic to apply this data. Some of them are new approaches for modeling movements. As currently, two main approaches. One is to make kernels and construct home ranges. Other way is to use trajectories. And then we are going to maybe combine trajectories and kernels, or how to construct kernels with trajectories. Also, do changes in population density affect the use or movement patterns, differences on the space use, temporal and spatial scales, and how interannual climatic variability and the consequent primary production affect temporal and spatial patterns. No? Here, I don't know if I have time, maybe not, but it's a short video. You can see here, this is the application that we use to control daily the animals that we have already tagged in the Doñana National Park. All the owners have the same application in their cell phone, and they can control obviously not all the animals, but their own animal. No? Some people have one horse, some people have 2 or 3, and they can control them. And you can see here, for example, you can click, you can check all the information regarding this animal, you can see the code of the GPS, you can see if it's working properly. You also can check the distance that is making every day. If it's normal, not normal, you receive also some alert. Also, you can see the path that the animal have followed during the last 24 hours. I don't know if you can see here the line, I think not. You can see here the path, and then you can also follow the path with the locations that are provided every half an hour. Obviously, we are not going to use that for any analysis, but it helps to control the situation of the animals, and also to control if they are behaving properly. As you can see here, all the animals now, as I made this video yesterday, so all the animals are on the up parts of the marshlands, because all the other parts are covered by water. So now all of them are here, and they are just behaving and moving only in these areas. This is completely different for terrestrial parts. Here you can see a cow that is in the natural reserve, and you can see also how it's moving and how this movement seems to reflect some patterns. Sometimes are really obvious, sometimes not, but normally when they are find a patch, they stop to feed and move around, and then just move longer distances. And here you have another example of the movement data that we already collected, And here, this is a sample of the total locations obtained from a male of cow, here from bull, during the month of July. So there should be around 1,500 locations, and we made a kernel. And you can see this is the Santa Eulalia Lagoon, and you can see how this animal has used their surrounding space and the resources during 1 month. Obviously, just checking that, you can see and you can imagine how many different things you can understand and you can think and you can ask, because we can just see changes through time, changes in different areas, changes according to many different factors. So we have some ideas, but we still need to focus on the most important, the most relevant, and that's all. Thank you for your attention.